What's up, everybody? What did we learn from Auburn Spring Game as Hugh Freeze heads into year two? We'll give you our takeaways. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. Our takeaways from Auburn football spring game. Dawn Staley in South Carolina are champs yet again, and Nate Oats in Alabama's magical run ends in the Final Four. Oh, yeah, and Eric Musselman actually left Arkansas. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And by the way, this episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs is helping you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's dive into it. As we saw we had Mizzou's spring game a few weeks ago, and next up on the calendar was Auburn as they held their spring game this past Saturday at Jordan-Hare Stadium. A big year ahead for Hugh Freeze, starting up year two on the Plains. So who stood out in the game? If you watched it like I did, if you maybe caught some highlights on the SEC network, whatever the case is, Hugh Freeze, obviously, look, he said that he was taking a little bit of a step back here and letting Derek Nix call the plays. And so, look, is he going to do that throughout the season? We will see. Obviously, I think he should be a little bit more hands-on with the offense this year after the issues they had in 2023. But let's jump into who stood out in the game. And we got to start with the true freshman wide receiver, Cam Coleman. He hauled in 4 passes for 92 yards, finishing the day as Auburn's leading receiver. He was also on the receiving end of the game's lone touchdown, a 34-yard pass from Payton Thorne. Coleman really showed his ability to help out his quarterbacks. Even when throws aren't that great, he can adjust and make those adjustments, and it's crazy considering he's a true freshman coming in, but should be a really big-time playmaker for Auburn for years to come. In addition to that, the Georgia State transfer, Robert Lewis, he also had some nice grabs with 5 catches for 73 yards, and Camden Brown also looked solid with 3 catches for 45 yards. Sam Jackson had a few catches. Greg McConaughey had a nice grab. Jay Fair had a catch. There's no doubt this is a different Auburn receiving corps. They actually have got some dudes now, and it already looks like Cam Coleman is a stud in the making. And then when you consider they're going to get the other big wide receiver signing in Perry Thompson in this summer, I mean, this is almost guaranteed to be a much improved squad over last year at Auburn. So I hate to crown a kid, before he's even played his first game in the conference, but how can you not be excited about Cam Coleman? He just looks like he's going to be an absolute stud for Auburn for years to come. Can they get him the football? That's the question. And so next takeaway, all eyes were on the quarterbacks. And Payton Thorne, I thought, looked okay. He had some nice moments. He said during spring that there were going to be some more RPOs in the offense this year, and we saw a couple of those in the 8A game. He finished with 4 carries for 20 yards. Obviously, they weren't tackling the quarterback, so 1 touch and he's down. But his first few throws of the game were off target. He settled in as the game went along, and they did the thing where they rotated all the, first team, second team, third team, fourth team throughout. So it was funny, though, late in the game, and they were doing 10-minute periods, basically, 10-minute quarters. When they got to the end of the third, Chris Doering asked Hugh Freeze on the field. He said, so I guess you're done with your first team offense. We've seen the last of Payton Thorne. He said, no, I think they're going to get back in there. And he got back in there, and his best throw came in that 4th period on the touchdown to Cam Coleman. So that was good to see. The other quarterbacks had some moments too. Hank Brown delivered an early 50-yard bomb down the field to Cam Coleman. Holden Gerner had a couple of nice throws. Walker White, he was off on some throws, but, man, you can already see, he's got quick zip or nice zip, quick release. I think Walker White's going to be a nice quarterback in the future for Auburn. So But the final numbers, Thorne was 9 of 13 for 133 yards. And Brown threw for 102. White threw for 83. Run game should be pretty good for Auburn. They get Jarquez Hunter back, Damari Alston, Jeremiah Cobb, Brian Batty. They maybe some concerns still for the Auburn offensive line. They should be better than last year, but they were not able to do much against the Auburn D-line in running the football in this one. Again, it's a spring game, so you don't want to overreact to too much, but got to run the football better than that in the season, and they will. Another thing that stood out, this Auburn defense looks like they're going to be really good again. And this time you're under a new defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin. And so kind of how they did the scoring, they were spotted a 27-point lead to open the game. But defense did a good job of holding their own, taking advantage of, positioning. And I thought did a pretty good job of getting off the field and obviously in the red zone defense. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Red zone offense was not good for Auburn. But Quintrell Jamison Travis, he had 3 tackles for a loss. Robert Woodyard and Austin Keys had tackles for a loss. I think it was over 10 tackles for a loss as a unit. But secondary looked real solid. Keontae Scott and Kayan Lee, I think those guys are going to make up one of the better corner duos in the conference this year. I like the secondary for Auburn. I like the front 7. I'm really excited to see what Keldrick Falk is going to do as a sophomore. DJ Reed looks really good. Brenton Williams had a really nice open field tackle. So they got some dudes, man. And, Ron Roberts, I thought, did a pretty good job with the unit last year. And now you bring in DJ Durkin, and he's had some nice teams, defensive units over at Texas A&M. So, at least on paper and what we saw in the spring game, it looks like Auburn's defense should be pretty solid again. They're just going to need some playmakers and some leaders step up and make some game-changing plays for them. But I think they've got it in them, and I think it's going to be fun to watch this Auburn defense fly around throughout the season. All right, but we got to get to the MVP of the day, and that was the freshman kicker, Towns McGough. And Auburn fans were introduced to him if they didn't already know him. He went to high school right there in their own backyard. But McGough was the game's most valuable player in the unique spring game format. Of course, they started down 27-0 to start the game. And the Auburn offense really all was the Auburn high school product, connecting on 7 of 7 field goals in the game. That included the game-winning 58-yard kick to lift the Auburn offense to a 28-27 8-8 win. But McGough, prior to the 58-yarder, the game winner, he was 6 for 6. He had makes from 26, 33, 34, 36, 43, 49. Really, really good. And so I'm intrigued. I think it's going to be an interesting battle there at Auburn on the special team side of things. I mean, obviously, they bring back Alex McPherson, who was, redshirt sophomore and was really good last year. So good kicking competition. Bring him in. But, man, McGough, really, really good day. And congrats to him, man. They even though it's a spring game, making your kicks, that was absolutely huge. So just a few other thoughts. Obviously, the Auburn offense struggled to find success in the red zone. There was one possession where they faced a 4th and 1 from the 2-yard line, and Hugh Freeze opted to keep the offense on the field, and they threw a slip pass over to Rivaldo Fairweather, the tight end, and he could not get the lone yard as he was tackled in the open field. So Auburn's offense saw 5 drives stall inside the red zone Saturday and forced them to settle for all the field goals. And the question becomes, right, what it always is. Does that mean the defense is just the offense is good, but the defense is just that much better? Hugh Freeze said after the game, it was a good day for our defense. They played really well. Thought they stopped the run extremely well, and then to see us make some explosive plays in the passing game was really good with Robert Lewis, Cam Coleman, and others getting some of those opportunities. So just kind of interesting, that debate on, all right, so maybe Auburn's defense is just really, really good. DJ Durkin has got that squad rolling, and, maybe the Auburn offense is going to be just fine. But, again, it's a spring game. We're talking April of 2024. They won't kick this thing off until September. So, you just you continue to work on what you get. And then, like I said, it's going to be fun to see when they get all the other incoming freshmen in here and see what this Auburn group looks like, because it was a good recruiting class. And still, all the success of 2024 for Auburn is going to come back to the quarterback. How good can Payton Thorne be? And we didn't get a lot of questions answered, but again, I like the RPOs. I liked some of the throws he made. And Hugh Freeze said in an interview with Chris Doring on the field, he said, yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago that he thought things really started to click for Payton Thorne. He said he really started to feel like that leader, that he's got ownership, that he feels fully comfortable in this offense and he's ready to go. And again, the big thing from now until August, September is going to be continuing to develop that chemistry with those receivers. Because we even saw it on Saturday. You're moving guys in and out. I mean, it's 4 different quarterbacks. Obviously, it's spring. That's what this is for. But come August, I mean, Payton Thorne better be on the right page with every one of these receivers. And if they are, Auburn's offense is going to be dramatically better this year, and they're going to have a chance to make a run and win a lot of games. So those were just my takeaways from the spring game. But again, I caution everybody, it's a spring game. We do this every year. There's always something we're excited about. And then the real season hits and reality sets in. And one of those dudes who played really well, you don't even hear from him in the regular season. It just happens all the time. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to give some love to Dawn Staley and the South Carolina Gamecocks, winning yet another national championship. Look, when the SEC wins championships, it's just, we got to talk about it because we do that a lot here in the Southeastern Conference. More Locked On SEC coming up next. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode presented to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have got the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Jobs isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process very easy and intuitive. Hiring becomes easy when you have that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats these days, you might not have all the time and resources to spend on the hiring process. Let LinkedIn Jobs do the work for you. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long and you got to turn down the volume because of all the shouting? Go make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today, bringing you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, let's dive back into it as we talk a little bit about yet another championship in the SEC. We'll get to the men's run and Alabama as their run fell short, but we got to talk about the champs, and that is Dawn Staley and the South Carolina Gamecocks. A year after their stunning Final Four loss that ended what could have been a perfect season and a championship run last year, the Gamecocks finished the job Sunday in historic fashion, beating the Iowa Hawkeyes 87-75 in the women's NCAA tournament title game to become the 10th team in Division I history to complete an undefeated season at 38-0. Of course, UConn did it 6 times. Gino Auriemma just was on a heater for a while. Baylor, Kim Mulkey did it in 2011, 2012. Tennessee, Pat Summitt did it 97-98. And Texas did it in 85-86. Those are the only other programs to go undefeated and win it all. But with its 3rd national title in 7 tournaments and 2nd in 3 seasons, South Carolina ties Baylor and Stanford for the 3rd most championships all time. And they cement their status as women's college basketball's latest dynasty. Coach Dawn Staley, she was a former 2-time player of the year herself, played in 3 Final Fours, but missed out on a championship herself as a player. She became the 5th head coach to win at least 3 national titles. And Dawn Staley saying after the game, look, they made history. They etched their names into the history books today, and they did just that. So congrats to Dawn Staley and the South Carolina ladies getting it done. Final Four most outstanding player, Camila Cardoso. She is expected to be a very high draft pick in this year's draft. She finished with 15 points and a career high 17 rebounds. She became the 5th player with at least 15 points and 15 boards in a championship game in the past 25 seasons. They out-rebounded Iowa 51-29, and Iowa, which beat South Carolina in the national semis last year before losing to LSU in the title game, they fall short once again, still looking for their program's first national championship. But Caitlin Clark's amazing historic career comes to an end, and she is the bridesmaid, not the bride. She did not was not able to come through and win a title. But South Carolina's 2017 title-winning team, they had Asia Wilson, of course. Then in 2022, they had Aaliyah Boston. But this group kind of, Cardoso was good, but it's not like they had that stud, just alpha dog that was going to put the team on their back and dominate from start to finish. But Gamecocks graduated Boston last year. She was the number 1 draft pick and 4 other starters. And they're the first team since at least 2000 to win a title after returning none of their primary starters from a team that reached the Final Four last season. And after a difficult end to last year, the Gamecocks, like we said, finished 38-0. And Dawn Staley's Gamecocks are 74-1 now over the past 2 seasons, despite 2 completely different starting lineups. Now, they will lose Camila Cardoso from this season's team. She, like we said, going to head to the WNBA draft. But much of this team is going to return. And South Carolina is going to be considered among the favorites, if not the favorite yet again, to win it all in 2025. But a few more notes on Dawn Staley and her historic career so far at South Carolina. Of course, she's been the head coach there since 2008. And look, those early years were very lean. She went from 11th in the conference her first year to 7th to 5th to 4th, made a Sweet 16 appearance finally in 2012. Then they made a Final Four run in 2015. And then alas, in 2017, they win it all and they were national champs. And now Dawn Staley has won 2 in the past 3 years. And that's now 3 straight women's titles for the SEC, with LSU and Kim Mulkey winning it last year. So quite an accomplishment when you go back to, Pat Summitt's teams in 07 and 08. And then we had to wait all the way until 2017 for an SEC team to win another title. And now it's 3 straight. And baseball's kind of got the same thing going. So SEC dominates in a lot of these spring sports. It's just the men's that eludes them. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But again, congrats to Dawn Staley. Congrats to the Gamecocks. And, now with Kenny Brooks being hired at Kentucky, Kim Mulkey doing her thing, she'll hit up the transfer portal and rebuild, add more pieces at LSU. Like, the women's sport is on the rise in popularity. And even if you were just a casual viewer before, I think, more and more people are kind of coming around. There's some star power. There's some really good coaches. And it's becoming more and more fun to watch the women's basketball side of things, especially with all these great postseason runs for the SEC. So, again, one more time, congrats to Dawn Staley. And I thought she made a really classy move. If you watched her on the podium after they won it, she gave a special shout out to Caitlin Clark, saying she appreciated what she did for helping the sport grow and the popularity. I mean, Caitlin Clark became a must-see TV for a lot of people who weren't really fans of women's college basketball. They said, we got to tune in to see her. So thought that was really classy of her to do that on the stage when it's their moment, celebrating their title. She still kind of tipped the cap to Caitlin Clark and said, wish her the best of luck, and heading off to the WNBA, see what she can do to help the popularity of that sport. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We'll touch on all that coming your way in just a second. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. All right, we got to dive back into it as we talked about the women's side winning it all. Well, how about over on the men's side? The SEC did have a lone representative in the Final Four. It was the Alabama Crimson Tide, and their run fell short. The number 4 seed Alabama men's basketball team fell to the defending national champs and top overall seed UConn 86-72 in the men's Final Four Saturday evening inside State Farm Stadium. Mark Sears led 3 Crimson Tide players in double figures. He had 24 points to go along with 5 rebounds and 3 assists. Grant Nelson had a season-high best 15 rebounds to go along with 19 points to earn his 4th double-double this season and 2nd in the tournament. Aaron Estrada added 13 points, 3 boards, and 3 assists. And UConn, 36-3. They were led by Stephen Castle, who finished with 21 points. And Nate Oats saying after the game, unfortunate that it ended tonight, but, man, we play arguably the best team in the country. He said, I mean, UConn is top 5 in offense and defense, and that showed tonight. He said, I thought our guys did a good job staying in there and not giving up big runs and continuing to fight. And just wasn't enough for Bama to get it done. And look, UConn is really good. I mean, their big man was just eating inside, and Bama just couldn't get stops. They just needed some stops. They were getting shots. They were hitting shots that they needed to, and they just could not get stops down the stretch that they needed. But Alabama finishes the season with a 25-12 overall record, and they reached the program's 2nd ever Elite 8 and first Final Four ever. So great accomplishment there. The 25 wins is tied for 7th most in program history, while the 37 total games are tied for the most in a single season. Mark Sears finished the year with 797 points, 26 games of scoring at least 20 points. Those are both season school records at Bama. And for the first time this season, Alabama failed to score any fast break points in this one. First time all year. And so now Nate Oats is 8-4 in 12 career NCAA tournament games at Alabama. That includes 3 Sweet 16 appearances, along with this season's Final Four. Quite a ridiculous run that he has had. And, again, congrats to him. Just a fantastic run there at Alabama so far. It was one of the best seasons for Alabama. And like we said, the team made it to the Sweet 16 last season. Didn't get out of the first round of 2022, but get to a Final Four this year. And Nate Oats lamented after the loss. He said, look, they couldn't take as many three-point shots as they would have liked. He said, Alabama shot 23 three-pointers, but only made 11 of them. They took 26 three-pointers in the win against North Carolina. He said, we knew they were going to try to run us off the line and be physical, and they did that. He said, we'd rather be pushing more like mid-30s on threes, but they were obviously going to try to take us off the line. When they took us off the line, we drove it in. They just did a better job forcing us to take more non-rim twos than we probably have all year. Alabama, they were only down by 4 points at halftime, but could not get back into the game. And UConn shot a ridiculous 50% from the field. Each player in their starting lineup was in double figures in scoring. So UConn will play Purdue in the national title game tonight. So yet another year, the SEC will not win a title in the men's tournament. It has been a long time coming for the SEC, but man, it's been since Calipari in 2012 when Anthony Davis and that squad won it all. And before that, you got to go back to the Florida teams of the mid-2000s with Billy Donovan and company. So SEC's knocking on the door, man. They've had some Final Four runs. They've had some deep tournament runs, but one of these days they're going to break through. I mean, we just said the women's side of things have won 3 straight. 2 for South Carolina, 1 for LSU. But the men, it's just a lot tougher. And some of these other conferences, the Big Ten's always tough. The Big East got some really, really good teams in those conferences. And so we'll see if the SEC can get closer to winning a title in the men's college basketball side of things. One more note before we call it a show. We teased it last week that the news was Eric Musselman was interviewing for the USC job in Southern California, and he took the job. We talked with John Neighbors about it last week, that it was leaning that way, and a source had confirmed Thursday that Musselman was indeed departing for USC. USC later confirmed the hire on the school's website, adding that Musselman would be formally introduced at a press event Friday morning, which he was. And Musselman said in a statement, he said, my family and I couldn't be more excited for this incredible opportunity at Southern Cal. Grateful to the school president for a chance to lead the men's basketball program at such a world-class university with a rich tradition of success. So, best of luck to Muss, but now Arkansas has to figure out who's going to be their guy. And we talked with John Neighbors on who would be in the driver's seat. And Chris Beard was one of the first names that came up. And very quickly, reports varied that, there were some, of course, there was, you go by Twitter. There was people on Twitter saying, "Oh, I'm hearing Chris Beard is on his way to Arkansas," but it kind of came out that ain't happening. That Chris Beard has told Ole Miss he is staying there, and so Hunter Yurachek had to go back to the drawing board. And last few days, there's been rumblings that Kansas State's Jerome Tang very well could be in the driver's seat. But then the Wildcats kind of came out and said Tang's not going anywhere either. So since striking out on both Beard and Tang, it appears Will Wade, former LSU and current McNeese head coach, could be the lead candidate. So we'll keep an eye on this. We'll see what happens. Buzz Williams' name at A&M has come up. It's just funny, when an SEC job opens, that other SEC coaches' names start coming up, and it's like, well, wait a minute, let's go steal from guys in other conferences. Why do we have to poach from our own conference? But nonetheless, maybe don't wish Muss the best of luck. I liked Eric Musselman. I thought he did a good job there in Arkansas, but don't wish him to have any success there at USC with the Southern Cal Trojans. So, hey, best of luck to whoever Arkansas gets. We'll certainly keep you guys up to date on that and see who they end up getting. But thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back tomorrow on the show. We'll talk some more football and tidbits from around the conference. And hey, for your second listen, go check out Locked On Sports Today, the streaming channel on YouTube, streaming 24/7. That's going to do it for Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. You guys have a great Monday out there. We'll watch that championship game tonight, even though there's no SEC game teams in it. And hey, we'll start to get into a little bit more talk on SEC baseball, as there's been some very disappointing teams so far in that, and some surprises. Arkansas baseball doing very well. So Kentucky baseball doing very well. So we'll touch on all that later in the week. But I'm Chris Gordy. This is Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.